Tonight, we continue our look into the life of Senator Stevens. In part 2 of our series, we focus on political issues the senator feels strongly about, from ANWR to earmarks and resentment when it comes to the overall political process. Decide for yourself, but we were surprised by many of his responses to these issues we've heard about for decades.
I don't know. I think I get more intense about issues now than I used to get.
We've seen him fired up on the Senate floor, and recently we've seen him let out his aggression inside his private Girdwood gym. To say there are a lot of issues on Ted Stevens' plate would be putting it mildly.
I was going to ask you what issue really gets you fired up.
ANWR. ANWR gets me fired up. In that area that was set aside for oil and gas exploration is still set aside. Now the big fight in this Congress is there are a couple of members of the House that want to repeal that portion. I say that area is no longer set aside for oil and gas exploration. It probably has the largest deposit of oil and gas in the North American continent. And we're not able to get to go and prove it. That makes me furious. It does. Gets my wind up.
If Stevens is reelected for a 7th term, ANWR will continue to be a priority. He's also deeply disturbed by what he considers a false alarm when it comes to further protection of our polar bears.
If we list the polar bears being endangered, every time you want to drill a well, every time you want to do anything, even build a new building, you're going to have to prove that you're not going to harm the habitat for the polar bear. And the habitat's not in trouble. It's the future habitat and the ice as they're talking about. But the polar bear's adaptable. If the ice goes away, I'm sure they'll survive.
He had the same argument back in the 1990s. At that time, President Clinton pushed to put a moratorium on all fishing from Cordova to Adak in order to protect the Steller sea lion. Different animal, same debate. And whether it's the sea lion, the polar bears, or the environmental tug-of-war over the Tongass National Forest, Stevens argues that extreme environmentalists are slowly killing our state.
We have had so many attacks from these extreme environmentalists, and I think the state has to wake up. We have tremendous potential here to do things that will be in the national interest and our own interest if we do them on a scientific basis. But these people are raising these issues now. They're not raising science. They're raising fear.
One of the biggest fears for Alaskans right now is a future without earmarks.
Do you feel like your constituents are very concerned about some of the things they're hearing? Do you think there's a general fear about how the state will thrive without earmarks?
We don't need them anymore. I'm not afraid of the earmark issue. The whole budget is earmarked. The president sends us a budget, and it says, I want this money for this, that. That's all earmarked. But presidential earmarks okay. But when it comes to Alaska, I think I know a little bit more about Alaska than the president does. And if they're going to put money here, I'd like to have some say about how it's going to be spent. And I will. There's no question about it. We will still have that say.
As the longest-serving senator in the history of the Republican Party, his voice is louder than most. But underneath tremendous pride for this young state, there are also layers of frustration. Consider our potential, then consider momentum that constantly fluctuates.
I want to find some way to reopen Alaska's future. We can't get the pipeline going. We can't drill in the Arctic. We can't harvest our timber. There's just roadblocks up.
Roadblocks that are popping up on Alaskan pavement lined with recent corruption, scandal, and probes. On the sidelines, a growing generation of young, skeptical voters, a concern a lot of you are voicing.
I've lost my faith in politics. I've lost my faith in the political process. How would you respond to that?
I'd say come spend a day with me and get it back.
Well, this week, Senator Stevens announced that he plans to post all of the earmark requests that he receives from local communities and the state on his website. He says it will help with efforts to make the government more transparent and show people that he does not pull the earmarks out of thin air. Senator Lisa Murkowski and Representative Don Young say they also plan on doing the same thing.